Okay, I'm going to do a redo on using Dell's OpenManage Server Administrator 7.3 and OpenSUSE 12.3 as of August 9th, 2013. I'm going to assume that you know what OpenManage Server Administrator is, but if you don't, a basic rundown of it is that it's a web-based interface that you can access your server on the local internet, or maybe if you have a pinhole connection over the internet, to make changes to some of the server settings, some of the BIOS settings, and some of the hardware readings warning settings, where you can configure it to send you emails if it starts to short out or it overheats or something like that. You can set up what's called SNMP traps to either broadcast a message on the screen or email you to warn you. So the purpose of OSMA is to be able to manage your server either remotely far away or remotely on the local net, and two, not to have to reboot your server to accomplish these things, at least not immediately. There probably are some BIOS setting changes that you can make in OpenManage Server Administrator that will require a reboot, but probably not immediate. Okay. Dell supports has limited support for a few Linux distributions. Let's put that another way. In general, Dell supports Linux on their servers. But in a more specific sense, there are two enterprise level Linux distributions that they certify to support just as well as, say, Windows would work if you had a Windows server. So it is what that means is that any software drivers that Dell supplies should be able to be easily installed or handled with your version of Linux that they said that they will support. So the two general vendor packages that they support is Red Hat Enterprise Server 5 and 6 and Novell SuSE Linux Enterprise Server 10 and 11. And they actually, for OpenManage Server Administrator, they'll actually create a specific RPM just for those four distributions. They'll build the RPM before they release it in those environments, or at least that's what I assume they do. They also have, Dell also lists in the should work category 2 clones of Red Hat Enterprise Server. Well, I know for sure one's a clone. It's CentOS and Scientific Linux. They also build Debian deb packages for what they call the Ubuntu repository, but it's also going to work in Debian. They build, but they don't test the packages. At least that's what they say on their webpage. Okay, so in my situation, I'm using OpenSUSE 12.3, and that's what my focus is going to be on. And so my goal is, after I've done with these videos, that someone that uses OpenSUSE 12.3 will feel just as comfortable as they would to use OpenManage Server Administrator on their server as they would if they were a customer of Red Hat Enterprise Server or Novell SuSE Linux Enterprise Server. Okay, so to get OpenManage Server Administrator working, you first need to be able to get the right software to be installed in your system. After OpenSUSE installs, generally these days the Linux distributions are built in such a way that all the software that you're going to install comes off the internet. OpenSUSE After you first install it, we'll already have what they call repositories set up. These are places where OpenSuSE's software is stored at Novell servers. Basically, the repositories are URLs where you download the RPMs when you install the package. But you set those up in the beginning, so when you go to search for the package name, the name will show up and then it will download when you search. There are a number of additional repositories you can add to an OpenSuSE installation, especially 12.3, which is what I'm talking about. And one of those is the Pacman repositories. If you want to learn more about OpenSuSE's additional repositories, additional to the 5 or 6 basic ones that they provide you with after you install, just go to Google, search for OpenSuSE 12.3 repositories, and look for the page that says additional repositories. Find the Pacman, P-A-C-K-M-A-N repositories, and add the essentials and the extras repositories in the manner that I'll show. Then I'm going to add the Dell repository. Then I'm going to talk about the additional software that you have to install that comes from OpenSuSE's repositories, the Pacman repositories, or comes from a straight download that you have to go get yourself. There's one RPM that you have to do that for. And once you have all those things set up, then you're ready to install the OpenManage packages. I'll show you which ones to install there. And then once that's done, I'll show you what changes to the system you need to make to get the OpenManage to consistently load, and then you're done. So I'm going to use a virtual machine here because my monitor is an old monitor and it sucks, for this camera at least, when I try to display what's on the screen over here. I'm not going to take much time to do it, but basically it likes to display black lines across it, even though when I look at it, I don't see any there. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add repositories. So to get to adding repositories, first you have to open up YAST. Now I happen to be in KDE 3, but you'll see an icon that looks something like a wrench and a green circle in KDE 4 if you use that, or the GNOME desktop if you use that. Then you'll see this kind of box, and that'll look familiar to you from that point. Click on Software Repositories, and you'll get a list. And generally, the repositories that start here down to here are the ones that come with OpenSuSE. I've added a lot of additional repositories myself from the webpage that I mentioned that you can search Google for to find additional repositories for OpenSuSE 12.3. Now, the Pacman repositories are here, and I'll try to clearly display the URL for the extras. I don't know if that's coming out clear or not. It doesn't look like it really is. And essentials. I'm pretty sure that one of those two repositories has this. Can't see. Lib GDBM3. Hold on. Library GDBM3-183_x8664. Wait, misspoke. That's the one you have to download. Sorry. The DKMS 2.0.22.0 no arch RPM. You can also get that from Dell's website, but it'll be an older version. You also need to search the internet, and I might as well just cover this now, for the library GDBM3 1.8.3 8664 RPM. That's only provided by OpenSuSE 12.2. It's not provided by 12.3. Don't know why. Now, these other packages you just need to install, and these come from OpenSUSE 12.3's regular repositories, as far as I know. I'll provide a list in case these are not very clear. Pardon my notes, those were for the BSDs. And I came to the conclusion that the BSDs don't have some of these packages, so one of the reasons why I'm redoing this is because I was saying that the BSDs would be able to use these be able to use OpenManage, but I don't think it can. So we got 3 SM BIOS utils packages, a library GDBM, SBLIM packages, OpenWSMan packages and libraries, NetSNMP, standard C++ libraries, libsmall, libsmbios, libOpenSSL, this weird library, libcmpi, cppi-mpi0, IPMI tool, or I think it might be IMPI tool, and CIM schema. I've gotten that backwards, IMPI or I, but we'll get that clear when I go over to the other place. So now this is how you add the repository. When you're in this screen, you click on Add. You just stick with the specify URL and download description files. You click on Next. You put the repository name in there, and you're going to put this URL that I will find shortly into your browser. Please stand by. Our customer service representatives are working hard to find a URL for you. Here it is. It is linuxdell.com repo hardware. So there's, after the com, there's a / repo / hardware / OMSA _7.3 / platform _independent / SuSE 11_64 /. Now to pause for a second there. If you happen to be using OpenSUSE 12.3 32-bit, I won't call you any names, I won't make fun of you, that's fine. You're just going to use, it's going to be SuSE, I think it's x86 instead of SuSE 11_64. But if you go, you can put that in your browser, Linux repo com, repo hardware, OMSA. In fact, I'll just do it. And I'll also mention paste linux.dell.com. Probably put the HTTP in there. But you, in your situation, since you're not hampered by a virtual machine, you're just going to copy and paste that URL in there and call the repository whatever you want to call it. Say Open Managed Server Administrator. Okay, then you're going to click on Next in your situation, and then it will want to refresh. It'll ask you if you want to add the GPG key and trust Dell. Yes, go ahead and trust Dell, right? That's the whole point. And then you've added your repository. You're also going to do that for the Pacman Essentials and Extras repository. And 3, there's Essentials. Again, see that repo data folder there? So you don't want to dig in. Look and see what I have here. 12.3 extra 3 / essentials with a capital E, then a /, copy that and put that in your URL. Do that for extras too instead of essentials, capital E. And then now we're going to go and we're going to install the first set of packages that come from OpenSUSE and Pacman. Also, libgdbm 3-183 83.393.1.3 x86, and then you just click on it, you can save it, and that way you have to manually install. Okay, so now once you get that installed, and let's go over here. to my horrible screen. First, you want to look for servadmin, srvadmin. These are all the packages that I have installed, but the one you're interested in is srvadmin/all. It's not very kind when I bring this thing close. Then you want to have these other packages installed here. CIM schema, IMPI tool, lib CMPI, CPP IMPI 0, 2 OpenSSL libraries, lib SMBIOS, lib small, 2 standard C++ libraries, lib WSMan, NetSNMP, OpenWSMan server, 4 SBlim packages, 2 SMBIOS packages, the 32-bit compatible 64-bit lib GDBM3 and SMBIOS utils Python. Then the package you got from OpenSUSE 12.2 and the DKMS you got from Pacman. Once you get all those installed, then you'll be able to install srvadmin all without a problem. Okay. So it takes about maybe 5 minutes for all that stuff to install once you've checked all the boxes. Click on accept, which is barely showing up down there. It'll download the RPMs because you've set up your repository, right? And then once it's done, you have OpenManage installed. Now you just have to configure to get it to work. And now I got to find the information that I had to get this thing to work. Okay, the first thing you have to do is you have to get 3 modules to load in OpenSUSE 12.3 at reboot. And to get OMSA to initially come up with all the information filled in on the web page without having to reboot, you have to mod probe for 3 different modules that are, I'm going to show here, which is IMPI message handler, IMPI SI, and IMPI DEVINTF. Okay, the way you do that is you have to go into the etc modules load D directory, and I'll show it here in my virtual machine. That's not my working setup. It's going to be clear. So there's the etc directory. And if you haven't noticed, I like just rolling as root, and I like KDE3. And so if I'm different, that's just the way I am. So etc modules load D. Now here you're going to create a new text file, and I'm going to call it impi.conf. And in my case, I'm going to right-click on it and open up kwrite. But if you want to be a Unix roller, you can sudo vi etc modules /load.d /impi.conf if you want. Or you could just go use a graphical user interface like I do. Okay, then you're going to type in those 3 module words, IMPI_MSGHANDLER. Then if you have X to your advantage, you're going to copy the IMPI and paste it and do SI. And you're also going to do DEVINTF, and then you're going to save this file. The next time you reboot, that will cause those 3 modules to load automatically, which will be one of at least 2 things you need to change to get it to load up and have all the information in the web page when you go to load it up. Okay. The next thing you have to change, and I'm going to have to show it over here, from a distance, is you have to go, and this assumes you've already got OpenManage installed. and all the other packages. By the way, I suggest that you look at the list that I am going to post, but I also had on camera, to make sure that you have all of the SRV admin packages installed. In fact, I didn't show that yet, did I? So there are 35 of them that I consider to be important to be installed. And I hope I can get this clearly, but I'm going to post these. So here they are. So if clicking on SRV admin /all does not get all these components installed for you, then you're going to want to search for these components and you're going to want to install them additionally to SRV admin all. And there's also this OSABM CUtil 9G, which is i386. It's a little bit out of date, but I have that on my list. I haven't tried to do that. Yeah, okay, so everything's installed. Now what you want to do, and this happens to be for the, by the way, the SRV admin DENG package. You're going to want to go into opt, Dell. So let's go back. Let's start over again because I didn't get that clearly. I went into Conqueror. Use the up arrow to go to the base. And I went over to opt. I went over to Dell. And I went over to servadmin. And then I went into the SBIN directory and I looked for a file called check system type. Right clicked on that in my case, selected kwrite. In my case, I'm going to view the line numbers because I happen to know that line 83 here, which you can't see very clearly because of this screen, it says vendor there in red. When you open it, it'll say OEM string 1. What you want to do is change OEM string 1 to vendor with a capital V. Keep it within the quotes so that it's still red. You're still not done yet. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the services that need to start at reboot. And you're also going to want to start them. So if you don't want to reboot, you're going to have to do mod probe. Let's just go back. So those 3 modules that I put into etc. modules load D, and I made that text file called impi.conf. Accomplishes what I'm going to do manually right now, which is mod probe space impi underscore msghandler. Oh, I spelled it probe. MOD probe. Do I have the wrong name here? MS, maybe it's IMPI. Yeah, okay, it's IPMI. I got this wrong here. So IPMI, and then you'll know that the module loaded if it doesn't give you any kind of response. When I misspelled IPMI as IMPI, it said fatal, we don't have a module called that. So it is IPMI, and I got to change my paper here. Okay, you're going to do that for all 3. IPMISI and IPMIDEVINTF. The next thing you're going to do is when you go into now we're going to make sure that the services start the web page for you. So we've got a module that will allow the services to run. Now we're going to load the services themselves. This will, you don't need to reboot, but if you do reboot, what I'm going to do will cause them to load when you do reboot. But the act of enabling these services starts them also. Okay, so you're going to look for the following services. Data Engine, DKMS, Auto Installer, 3 services start with DSM, BMU SOL proxy, OM con service, OM share services. Then you have the inst serve drive, rack serve sh, raw, snmpd, and mptctl services. And the way you activate that is you look for them over here, click on it, and you click on enable. And then you click OK when you've selected all those different services that I have there. So they're 11. So make sure you select all 11. Now they may already be enabled, but I'm just going through this process to let you know this is something that has to happen. And if it doesn't, it's not going to work. Then you click OK, and it'll say changes to the run level will be saved, and you're pretty much ready to go. There's only one small minor bug in the whole thing, and that is OMSA can only be run with Firefox and Internet Explorer. It won't run with Conqueror, and I happen to be going with Conqueror here because I'm KDE3. So, which, by the way, OpenSUSE does have a KDE3 repository and it works very well. So if I double click on this icon, it's going to tell me, sorry. I could go ahead and accept the certificate, and also the first time you try to launch it, but it's going to tell you that, the browser is not supported, right? That's okay. You just go up to the Firefox icon that you have. I think that comes by default with OpenSUSE, and you put in 127.0.0.1:1311. But before you press enter, you type https://. Otherwise, you'll just get a blank page with a little tiny question mark in the upper left-hand corner, and then there's your login screen. So you're good. You're ready to go. The only thing that's really missing, and I'll show you what those things are, and that's, I think, because I don't have a power supply and I'm not using RAID on my server here, is under storage. It says no storage controllers found. And let's see, under the main, I think it's the temperatures or voltages under the main system chassis button. Why is it still at the storage? There's something going on. I remember there's one of these things. Power management. That's the one. Power management comes up as nothing for me because I don't have a uniform power supply. That's a battery pack. If power goes out, the server will stay on. You can shut it down gently without just powering off like that. So I think I've covered everything for OMSA. My next one that I'll do in a few minutes will be for firmware tools, which is a little more confusing, a little harder to talk about. I guess I'll add just one little thing that I found out could work. It contradicts the blog, the very helpful, or the only blog about Slackware and OMSA that was made. Someone had put, at least had put OMSA in Slackware back when it was around version 5. But one thing that I did find is that at least when I'm in KDE3 and I'm opening up an RPM, there's the serve admin table RPM, and I right click on it and I go down and I say open with ARC. Okay, I can see what the RPM wants to install. Okay, and this is a little more realistic than what I showed in my last presentation. So, in general, let's say you have Slackware and you want to get Open Managed Server Administrator. Well, you're not going to have the luxury of being able to click on an RPM and install it that way. But you will have the luxury of right-clicking on the RPM and opening up with ARC and seeing where the RPM wants the stuff to land. So what you're going to do is extract the archive, and you're going to manually place in the Dell serveradmin live64 open manage private directory these two files, and in the share man you're going to put those two files, and then in the user share you're going to put those files. or the equivalent for Slackware. So if Slackware, this I think is going to be fine because that's under opt. All this stuff is, now if Slackware puts its documents for packages under user local share, then you'll put yours under user local share instead of user share. So you're going to manually place everything that belongs, and that will have the effect of installing the RPM, but you can see how much longer that's going to take rather than being able to download it with your package manager. And there'll be another caveat, and that is that your package manager for Slackware is not going to know that these things are installed. You're also going to want to find the Slackware equivalent packages to the ones that I've listed that are the non-Dell RPMs. That first set that I talked about that you want to install first, that included the library GDBM before you do this. So if you can get that first set installed through Slackware, Swarette, if that's what they still use, then all you're left with is, unfortunately, is this manual placing of the files. If you really want it in Slackware, you can do it, but it's going to be harder to do. Now, I think I read in that blog that there is a tool that you can convert RPMs into target zip files, and then maybe that way your package manager will have kept track of what you have installed, because it's always better to have the package manager know what you've installed, especially with libraries, because they might ask you to install a library you already have with one of these orphan packages, right? Fortunately for the BSDs, I did some looking into it. That's what this red chicken scratch is all about. And basically, I didn't see that the BSDs had the same kind of SM BIOS packages or the OpenWSMan packages or the SBLIM packages available to them, even in the ports. Or if they did, they were getting RPMs off of Ubuntu or OpenSUSE. So I'm not sure whether you can get OpenManage working in the BSDs. And I know that Dell doesn't think so. The employees that have posted at the PowerEdge mailing list have said that they don't support it, the BSDs. And getting the only module you have to load is, if it exists, the BSD version of IPMI message handler, data in IPMSI, and DEVINTF. Now, I did see that there was one posting somewhere about someone using IPMI, and all they had to do for FreeBSD is edit the boot load.conf file and add IMPI equals yes, but I don't know if that's the equivalent of these three. And then I still don't know if there's a completely differently named package in the BSDs that does the same thing as OpenWSMan. It looked like there might have, but I wasn't sure. SM BIOS, there was something called Swan BIOS, but I don't think it does the same thing. I don't know if you would have success in the BSDs, but in Slackware, if you really want it, you can do it. It's just very manual, which almost defeats the purpose, because basically these are BIOS settings, and a lot of the time you set your BIOS settings first time you turn the computer on, and you don't mess with them again. So that's it for this presentation. I think I did a better job, and I don't think I really misspoke too much. And my pictures are a little bit clearer, so I'm going to go with that, and then I'll do the firmware tools, because I was a little tired when I made that last one.